Lucid is currently hard at work at ramping up their Gravity SUV, which I actually got to check out in person recently, which was really fun. The efficiency is what excites me the most about Lucid. Not so much the prices, which are pretty up there for me, but Peter Rawlinson is well aware, I think, of their high prices, and is kind of following in the product roadmap release cycle as Tesla. You know, they started with a high-price luxury sedan. Now they're working on basically their Model X equivalent, although it's much more efficient and much more spacious than a Model X, which was pretty cool. Once again, following in that trend of one-upping Tesla. But I think all of us can agree what kind of made Tesla into the company that it is today is not so much their high-price, expensive, Model X crossover. It was more so their high-volume vehicles with lower starting prices that the masses can actually afford, like the Model 3 and then later the Model Y, which share so many components and design qualities that they might as well be looked at as kind of the same platform. And Lucid recently has been kind of hyping up their next platform that is supposed to help them break into that lower price bracket, claiming on more recent earnings calls that they expect the starting price to be around $48,000 before incentives. So basically what it sounds like is Lucid has a plan and a vehicle design that they'll probably unveil either late this year or maybe next year, which is going to be their Rivian R2 competitor, which is Rivian's Model Y competitor. And these three big EV brands are basically competing over this mid-size crossover segment that they know is so popular because the Model Y has become the best-selling vehicle in the world, gas or electric. And Rivian's emphasis seems to be a little bit more on adventuring and off-roading. How can we make a Model Y competitor that is a bit more boxy with more storage capability and maybe has a little bit more analog controls, but still really great software with an emphasis on that, camping, adventuring spirit. Whereas I think Lucid, while it's probably going to have similar dimensions to the other guys, is probably going to put a bigger emphasis on something that I would argue is honestly kind of important and kind of valuable in the EV space, and that's efficiency and also luxury to a certain extent. Higher quality materials, good build quality, and a comfortable ride that's probably not going to be as great at off-roading and adventuring. Maybe they'll reserve that for the Lucid Gravity with more of an air suspension design, but the Lucid midsize, I think, having an efficiency emphasis does actually give them a little bit of an edge over everybody else, because as we all know, the battery pack is the most expensive part of the EV. So the smaller one you can use, essentially, that should allow you to unlock more margins or hypothetically lower prices. But knowing Lucid and how they're pricing the Lucid Air sedan and the Lucid Gravity, it's more likely that they'll take that margin they get from using a smaller battery pack and put that more into the quality of the materials and the build. They'll come up with some other luxury feature that some people might really care about, but I'm basically trying to say I don't think the mid-size Lucid that's around the corner is probably going to be undercutting the Rivian R2 or the Model Y. Tesla just has such economies of scale and so many factories that are already building the Model Y. They've got their gigacasting tech, so it's probably going to be hard to beat the pricing of the Model Y in the Rivian, but Lucid might use that efficiency gain to their advantage for better range than the other guys. But knowing that Lucid, within the same form factor as the Model X, same length, same width, and about the same height, was able to cram much more storage space and still achieve more miles per kilowatt hour with the Lucid Gravity, thanks to their higher voltage architecture, which allows for faster charging, and also their much more aerodynamic profile. It gets me excited, honestly, for what Lucid's next chapter is with this midsize, whether it's going to be a sedan or a crossover, maybe a little bit of both, something a bit shorter than a Model Y, but it still has a hatchback, I think would be really smart, because I think that Lucid has kind of made a mistake by focusing a little too hard on the Lucid Air, just because the market for high-price luxury sedans is not that big, and they just put all of their production capacity into the Lucid Air, and that's why they have so much supply now. I don't think they're going to have a demand issue with the Gravity, but I think it would kind of help them leapfrog everybody else to the market if they didn't follow Tesla exactly by making a, more affordable sedan like the Model 3 and then waiting a couple more years before releasing a crossover version of that sedan. I would say kind of combine Tesla's 3 and Y by making something a little bit shorter than the Y, but a bit more spacious than a 3, and still make it have a hatchback so it has the storage capacity, but it's much more efficient than a Model Y. And my hope is that's what Peter Rawlinson is referring to in his more recent interviews, claiming that internally they've developed a vehicle that can exceed 5 miles per kilowatt hour on the EPA test cycle. Yes, I can hit 5 miles per kilowatt hour in my current Model 3 if I drive the speed limit and the weather is good and all that. I assume Peter was referring to, an EPA test cycle exceeding 5 miles miles per kilowatt hour, which is not something Teslas have done. And if they can do that with kind of a hatchback, a little bit higher off the ground than a Model 3, and still have a great efficiency emphasis so they can have high range with a reasonably sized battery pack, and of course they'll probably use that extra margin to increase the quality of the interior, use nice materials, make it a really smooth, comfortable ride. I've experienced the coil suspension on the Lucid Air, and it's incredible. So I'm pretty sure that's what they would use on this mass market vehicle as well. And I think we might have a pretty compelling Model Y competitor on our hands that might find a way to separate itself from the Rivian R2 by using a smaller battery pack and focusing more on ride comfort instead of just off-roading and adventuring capability. But what do you guys think Lucid's intellectual property and in-house design with their motors and their super efficient battery pack, how do you think they're going to separate it from everything else on the market? Is it going to be a massive frunk, like F-150 Lightning style frunk, or is just the faster charging, going well over 300 kilowatts, going to be enough to separate them from the R2 and the Model Y? Feel free to speculate along with me down in the comments below. And thank you to everybody supporting this channel directly. Seriously, helps us out a ton, as does just watching these videos. So thanks again. Have an excellent rest of your day.